Fearless. Provocative.
Straight talking. We will say it like it really is.
With dignity and respect.
Committed to free speech, common sense.
Upbeat and entertaining.
Straight talking and direct.
We may agitate each other and you.
Heartfelt and passionate.
Thought-provoking, provocative and controversial.
Fearless and truthful.
Fearless. Provocative. Straight talking. Fearless. Provocative. Straight talking.
Welcome to The Pledge, the programme where we leave our mics on and are rude about everyone. Watch and learn, Your Majesty. This week, Rachel will talk about the price of milk. June will go right back to Adam and Eve. Greg's got a message of hope. Sorry, Greg, that sounds rather Obama-esque. And Michelle explains why she wants a group hug with doctors. But first, it's my turn. Now, while I admit to being utterly conflicted as to how to vote in the EU referendum, what I am absolutely certain about is how much I loathe the fear tactics employed to date, from both sides. Just this week, it's featured everything up to including World War III and the UK becoming the next Greece. It's as if we're facing the apocalypse. Well, just listen.
Can we be so sure that peace and stability on our continent are assured beyond any shadow of doubt? Is that a risk worth taking?
Many Greeks are now living in third world conditions. Italian banks are becoming insolvent, and terrible levels of youth unemployment have become, for the EU, a terrible price worth paying.
Teams, please stop the scaremongering and give us something to which we can aspire.
Well, Nick, I think there's lots that we can aspire to. I think our continued leadership role within the EU. I think protecting 4 million jobs. I think our continued partnership with our biggest trading partner. For me, I think that's very aspirational.
Well, you immediately say protect 4 million jobs. You can't possibly know that 4 million jobs will go like that. There's no way you can actually back that up.
Well, I'm not saying
and
that...
it's just as... And it's the same on both sides. I need to say that very quickly. I mean, what is it? We won't be able to make a cup of tea because the kettles won't have the same power, and poor old Greg won't be able to have the patios at his many houses cleaned because the patio cleaners will have to have their power taken down. This is not... If you look back at what Obama achieved all those years ago, if you look at, and I don't want to steal your thunder because I know you're going to be talking about London's Mayor Sadiq Khan, those were messages of hope. Yes, we can. Can we do it? Yes, we can. All this is fear, 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 fear. We'll have no jobs and we'll be Greece.
But I think what I've just said are messages of hope. Those are where we can progress. This is what we know we have, and what we have isn't actually that bad if we're honest about it. Why wouldn't we want to continue and keep that? Why would we want to take a risk for something we have no idea about? That's just being honest, Nick. That's not about scaremongering.
Rachel, why was your brother driving around this week in a German-built bus?
That would have been cheaper. That's cheaper because we're in the EU.
What worries me about that bus is not only is it German-built, but have you seen the size of this monster? And
you're talking about your brother or the bus? Because you should know, love. You'll know better than most of us.
I'm talking about the size of his ego.
Oh, right, okay.
And yours, Nick. God, now we're on the subject. No, this is enormous. He's planning to take this to my father's hill farm on Exmoor, which is 2 miles up an unmade road. So I think we've seen the last of the Brexit battle bus, I can tell you, because you can't even get a small white van up there. But maybe I've spent too long on the Boris Brexit battle bus.
OK.
But I don't agree with you that I'm not saying anything, but I don't think that the Brexiteers are playing so much to our fears.
You don't think so?
Sorry, I just made a rhyme. I rhymed. No, wait. But then you say, because actually, if you boil it down, their message is we can do it on our own. No,
that's
we
not
can
their
do
message.
it on our own. We're big enough, we're strong enough, we're independent enough to do it on our own.
That is not their message.
What you were saying that the scaremongering on both sides, there's been a little bit of scaremongering.
No, there's a lot of scaremongering on
They say we can take
Brexit.
Control of our borders and control immigration. Is that scaremongering?
Which is a lie.
Or the only other thing that you seem to say is that the criminals are coming and pouring in unchecked via the EU.
I haven't even touched that.
I think it's very similar.
Michelle.
It's very, very similar to what I experienced personally just under 2 years ago in the Scottish referendum, where I had lunatics threatening me. I had, death threats and everything else. And
Twitter trolls. Because you said we should be better together.
Yes, absolutely. But people should say what they think. And, we're all human beings at the end of the day, and we all have an opinion. But, yeah, I do have to agree with you. I think there are a lot of scaremongering tactics. And
Greg, what would it be if one of them actually tried to reach for the sunny uplands, one side? What might it bring to the campaign?
I don't think it makes any difference, because as soon as somebody does, the other one says you can't get there, you'll never get there, because instead this is going to happen and that's going to happen. I mean, what it's told me is, let's not have government by referendum, thanks very much, because we've now spent weeks and weeks and weeks on this, and there's another, 5 or 6 weeks to go.
40 plus days, isn't it?
40 plus days to go. Without, what people keep saying to me is, I want to see the facts and the figures, and that's it. But the trouble is, there's no consensus on the facts and the figures from both sides.
Everybody's pumping out facts like geezers, but it still doesn't make any difference, because you've got facts being produced on both sides, which seems contradictory.
But you've got to look at where our facts are coming from. Our facts are coming from very credible sources. I can't speak on behalf of the others.
4 million
from the government
That's 15 years ago. That
from
figure
the
is
CBI. Where else do you want these facts from?
That fact is 15 years old. It's
not
been reassessed for more than a decade.
That's not true.
And the problem is, by the way,
the CBI reiterated that fact, that stat, almost, 6 weeks ago?
But Greg's right. The trouble is, we'll see if you agree, Greg, every fact you have is open to interpretation. Yes. Virtually every single... And this is the problem. Because what you present...
But you have to look at it at the end of the day. You know, we need to have stability. And I believe that I've been on the fence as well, but I am staying in, because I'm just not prepared to take that risk in business.
I agree with you.
We need to get the country back and the country going. And yes, you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing if we weren't in the EU, but we are in the EU, and I think it's too risky to come out.
And also, can I just say another thing, Nick?
Go on.
I think the thing that concerns me most, as is always the case, and, you know, Rachel, you and I have spoken about this, is when you look at the people who will be worst affected if we... And that's not scaremongering, it's just the truth. If we leave the EU, it's the often overlooked groups. It's going to be women, it's going to be young people, it's going to be people from BME communities, because when you look at what... Let me finish. Because if we leave... No. If we leave on June the 23rd, the priority obviously has to be protecting the pound. The priority obviously has to be safeguarding sterling. So therefore, it's going to be the banks.
Does that affect
can I finish? I didn't say non-white people.
You said BME.
Poor people.
Yeah, but you said
women.
BME. So why?
No. I said women, poor people, young people. There are a lot of white people in that
I feel scared now.
Absolutely
scared. I'm absolutely terrified that the world is going to end.
I finished my point.
I think the real danger of this thing is it's going to be decided disproportionately by older people, and it's not their future.
And it's not their future.
It's not their future.
And you don't think they should be even allowed to vote?
Well, I don't know. That was a tongue-in-cheek remark.
I mean, fine,
but I do think that if you look at all the stats, I mean, young people are going to vote overwhelmingly to stay in, and old people are going to vote overwhelmingly to come out.
I mean, you voted against the expansion of the Roman Empire. You've been around that long enough.
I have, and I was right then.
You know what I think the essential problem is, and we're going to have more scaremongering, not less, and I think people can't really absorb statistics. What this referendum is telling us is that it's a revelation of your political personality, and the people on both sides of the camp know that. So the Brexiteers are appealing to the sort of ho for the open seas, piratical, you know, independent, buccaneering types, and the Remainers like June are appealing to the let's keep hold of nurse, and we can't risk rocking the status quo, and it's all going to be nightmarish. So both of them, basically, that's all that's going to happen. People are going to go to the polling booth and think, what do I feel? It's an emotional decision.
I know, but I take risk in business every day. But I think this risk is too much. Yeah. It really is. It's like the unknown, and I don't think that we should take a risk like this. I think even HSBC, the head of HSBC last week, I think it was last Monday, said that this is a bad idea. And it will really affect the economy as well.
You're right, it's going to be untidy.
But I think there's a lot of young people who I think they've been it's been there all their lives, and they think this is the norm. And the idea that suddenly they're not going to be able to go and work in Italy, or they're not going to be, I think will become an anathema to them. And that's why I think it'll split between old and young, disproportionately. And in the end, the young should decide.
I was speaking to 1,500 business leaders yesterday, and they asked them all to put up a green card or a red card. 80% of them put up the red card.
To stay.
To stay.
Because it's good for business and it's good for Britain.
Well,
usually in elections people want change, but it seems to be not in referendums.
No.
I'll tell you the thing that scared me the most is the idea that your brother's going to get stuck in a German bus trying to get to your dad's farm. That sounds stuck up the track. All right.
That could be a good idea.
Yes, there are many who would cheer.
Did he have the bike on the bus?
I'm sure he did.
I've admitted I still don't know which way to vote, but the pressure's on, and as we said, time is running out.
You've got to keep us in. No. You've got to pull us out. You've got to be sure that is something everybody's gonna talk about before you decide that the time's right for making your mind up. Don't let your indecision take you from behind. Trust your instinct, but don't let any other change your mind. If you've had enough, I couldn't care less. If you want to see some more, to be on remain, stay in or head towards the exit door. But when people can show what they think they know, they're making their mind up. You'll be making your minds up. We're making their minds up.
Well, how apt is that? It's Eurovision this weekend. I think we've just got our entry. Just on a final point for now, because don't worry, we've got 40 days of this still to go. Going back, you were talking about Scotland. How much did fear drive the vote in the Scottish referendum, would you say, Michelle?
Well, I think the Scottish vote was terrifying at that time. And, you know, I'm really, really passionate about Scotland, but I was scared as well. But there was a lot of things in there in the white paper, 659 white paper, you know, we're going to get $113 a barrel, and it crashed down 4 weeks later to 52, and then, you know, it dropped down again to 28 or something. So I think there was a lot of fear-mongering tactics, and, you know, I was scared. There was families falling out, which was horrible, and people want to settle down now.
We've got to bring it back to Project Hope now.
Yes.
Last week, there seemed to be winds of change blowing. The ruling class in some quarters looks a bit different this week, less born to rule. London elected her first Muslim mayor, Sadiq Khan, the son of a bus driver. Did he ever mention that? Beat Zach Goldsmith, the son of a billionaire. In Scotland, Ruth Davidson, a working-class, lesbian Scottish Tory, which was almost an oxymoron until a few days ago, is nipping at the heels of Nicola Sturgeon's SNP and even being talked about as a possible future leader of the Conservatives. How many swallows make a summer? Are we witnessing the emergence of a more meritocratic governing class, one that looks like the country as a whole, black, female, gay, working class, rather than government by posh white boys who don't know the price of milk? Are we really seeing real cracks in the class ceiling?
Well, I think it's very interesting, and I think what the public want is a well-educated politician, but in touch with the people. And I think that people have to relate to that politician, and that's what the issue is at the moment. Ruth did an amazing job.
And so you think it's less about class background, but about authenticity and being able to connect with normal people like Ruth Davidson, who could hold a pint glass, whereas Zach Goldsmith couldn't. I didn't know where to put his hands. And she's down with the lads. And do you think that's more? I mean, she looks really like an average voter, a Scottish average voter, female voter. I might say more than you do, Michelle. But why do you think she's cutting through?
I just think she keeps it real. She's authentic. She's smart. And the people love her, and well done to her.
Why are you
Because
grumbling?
you're honestly saying, right, we're going to elect leaders by whether or not they can hold a pint glass.
Honestly,
it doesn't matter. We should be worrying about where these people are going to, not where they're coming from. I don't give a flying fig whether the next party political leader who actually knows anything, whether he or she went to Eton or Cheltenham Ladies College or a bog-standard comprehensive or even was home-educated. I could not give a damn.
As long as they can do their job.
Absolutely. And this strange obsession we have in Britain. Oh, they went to Eton. Oh, they went here. Don't worry about it. Actually, why not have people who've benefited from great education?
I'll come back to what you actually said, which is this the moment of change? Well, let me tell you, go back to the 60s, and if you'd said in 50 years' time the government of Britain was still going to be dominated by old Etonians, you would not have believed it.
Change has been long
We thought
time
the
coming.
world had gone. And actually, to find this is where we are, that the old Etonian lot have come back into power. We thought they all went with Alec Douglas Hume. That was the end of it.
And it took 50 years after Martin Luther King,
electorate.
It took 50 years after Martin Luther King said...
To get a
didn't it, to
I
get
have
a
a dream.
dream?
Yeah.
It has been very
it's very refreshing, though. I think it's great that she's got the skills, she's very smart, but she connects with the people as well.
Is this Ruth Davis?
Yeah,
Oh, right.
I think that's very refreshing, very rare as well.
I think one of the things to say is that actually we should be concerned if all of our leaders are only from one sector of society. That makes no sense whatsoever. And I think the wonderful thing about Sadiq's victory and Ruth's, and particularly Sadiq's, because of the negative campaign he was up against, just shows that Britain as a society is changing, and that actually people want their politicians to represent them and to represent a much more meritocratic society. And I think we're bored of all of the Etonians ruling all the time. I mean, they're not going anywhere anytime soon, but I mean, come on guys, you've had a good run. Share a little, just a little.
Don't you think people are getting more interested in politics? That's what I think as well.
Of course they will.
I mean, I was never like that when I was young, but I think a lot of young people are getting so interested.
Well, I think they're interested in issues. I'm not sure they're getting more interested in political parties.
But
they're interested in all sorts of issues, and they join all sorts of campaigns for those issues.
No, but Greg,
I mean, if you look back at... sort of... I mean, Corbyn has certainly brought people into the Labour Party in a large number. Whether they're the people that the Labour Party wants is another matter.
A white public school educated...
A white, old,
North
public
Londoner.
school educated male, yes.
But going back to
what kind of school did you go to?
You know what kind of school I went to. Actually, I went to state schools, I went to faith schools, I went to day schools, I went to boarding schools.
You got expelled a lot, didn't you?
I went to a European school.
Did you go to a finishing school?
Obviously.
I want you to challenge Nick, because I think Nick's wrong about saying that it doesn't matter
It
that we
matters.
have a government of an elite.
Of
I think
course
it
it
really
matters.
matters.
Of course it matters.
For the job.
Who's to say...
The electorate.
If we were going to choose the best for the job, we probably wouldn't have any of them.
Yeah, but we
probably
don't have a fair
totally
pick.
different
But
system.
I have to agree with Nick on this one, that I think it
how?
is down to... Well, it's down to your skill set in business as well. It doesn't matter if you're
not.
male,
This is
female...
loaded against
working
It's about the skill.
White boys,
It's
especially
refreshing.
from the start.
Yes.
Do you realise what you're actually saying, which is now, if you go to
need
Eton or
reverse
you go to
social
Harrow,
engineering.
don't even try for a job in
No,
public
that's
life.
not what
that's
you're saying,
because I'm sorry, we are determined to get people from the school in some
but
That is
doesn't it
absolute
surprise you that
rubbish, Nick.
so many from that particular background happen to just get there? Is that just
Like
coincidence? Is that just
95
chance?
something.
Or is
You
that
know
actually
the
to do with a
I think-
bias system?
You know the
I think
statistics.
it's
A
to do with-
7% privately educated elite occupy 70%
I
of
think it's
all
to do with
positions of
people
power,
from
if
private
not
schools
more.
dominating conversations and not allowing people to talk.
Take control. Take control.
So does that mean you wouldn't send your kids to private schools, or you didn't?
I sent them to both sorts of schools, and it is one of my bitterest regrets that I didn't educate them completely in the state sector. I
Why?
have lumbered them with disadvantage.
What disadvantage
Well,
do they
you've
have by going
lumbered
to
them
private
with
school?
Because it's
privilege. How
not
is that
real. I want them
disadvantage?
to have a real experience.
How is private
of
school not
life.
real?
It's Nick.
Oh.
you
I
didn't
attended
go
one. I went to one. Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah. Very
Because
proud
you
to say.
intersect
And both my
with
children went.
the products of the private school system. It's a self-perpetuating
No,
elite and
a
a
good-
self-electing
no,
elite,
a
and
good-
I don't think it's right.
I agree with you entirely.
I agree with you
A
entirely.
good private
Yeah.
school will teach you to treat you exactly the same whether you're sitting with a duke or whether you're
That
sitting with a
is
dustman.
absolute
Yes, they will.
rubbish.
Yes, they
That's
will.
absolute
And they
rubbish.
make you,
That's
and
just
as indeed
manners,
happened to
Nick.
me.
That's
as-
not about
no,
education.
Well,
no.
that's
If you're
not
in the
what
politics
we've seen in
society at
real
17,
life.
you suddenly find yourself sitting down next to somebody who was the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, and I've got to make conversation with him for 35 minutes before he
That's
goes and
just
speaks.
manners.
That
That's
is
how
the
you're
benefit.
brought
No,
up.
and it's because they don't. Now, I wish every school could be like that. I wish fervently, but clearly they can't, and that's what private education gives you.
No, but what, you know, back to
I
Rachel's...
don't think it gave me that. But
Well, very well. You seem to have gone to a different school every term.
Yeah. Back to Rachel's point, the wonderful thing about just having much more diverse faces in positions of leadership is it's a great example and it's great role modelling for young people. I know for us, I am no Thatcherite, but growing up with her as Prime Minister for so many years is part of the reason why I thought I could do something that was more than where I came from. So let's not underestimate how important it is for young people to see that.
But one of the big changes actually is in the Labour Party, isn't it? Because for a long time, trade unionists who didn't often didn't go to university. That's not true anymore. What's happened? Who are the Labour MPs of today?
Yeah.
Everybody's been to university. Everybody's going through, and
most
we've
of them
missed out because we've lost. We've lost working class people in politics because of what's happened to the Labour Party.
I'm not sure. I think it comes down to you being determined as an individual and deciding what you want to do.
But isn't that a part product of your education and your parents? Don't they give you that level of determination?
Well, my mum and dad, I went to just an East End school and, I made it sort of in business, but I think it's about your determination and your can-do attitude.
No, but
I think it comes down to that.
I disagree to a point, Michelle. I think you have to be particularly exceptional for that to be the case, because at the end of the day, your trajectory is very different. You became successful in business, you built your own business, and you found your own customer. So your background didn't necessarily play a part in preventing that for you. But if you had gone the traditional political route and you weren't from the elite, there would be so many walls that you would come up against. It is no coincidence that the majority of people from all parties come from this very small group.
I think
that's by design.
I think it's wonderful that we have more people in public life who look like everyone in the country,
like this
rather than just
even.
one sort.
We all want too many people looking like me.
Yes,
Frighten the horses.
Look like Michelle and June, especially.
Anyway, guys, would you become a doctor in the UK right now? I know I wouldn't. It takes at least 10 years of training to become a consultant, and you end up with massive debt. Nearly 9,000 doctors applied for the certificate, allowing them to work abroad last year. I think our doctors are having a hard time, and I want to stick up for them, even if I might get into trouble. We need to give them more incentives to stay. What about offering them tax breaks and helping them pay back their loans, or even just giving them the option of a day off on their birthday? It's not just about money. I hear a lot of people complaining about unpleasant medical staff. But wouldn't you get grumpy if you spent all day caring for people without so much as a thank you?
OK, before we get into the debate, who are you going to be in trouble with? You're too old to be in trouble.
I think she's thinking about the whips.
The Tory whips. Don't take any notice of them. I mean, what politics tells you over the years is the people who told the whips where to go end up as the heroes.
I'm saying nothing.
You're saying that. This is only after 6 months. You've got to learn to overcome this.
No, Michelle's just given us a great pledge newsline, which is that Michelle is on the side of the British Medical Association against Jeremy Hunt.
Yes,
well done, Michelle. Great girl.
Surely there's two things happening here. First of all, the government is trying to introduce a full National Health Service at the weekend, which is a very laudable thing to do, but you can't do it for nothing.
No.
And if you try and do it for nothing, you end up with the problems they've got
now.
Secondly, what motivates doctors is not money. What motivates doctors is wanting to... they want to care, they want to do... but also, they want to feel that the people they're working for appreciate them. And actually, I'm afraid we've got to a stage where they do not think this government appreciates them, and it's only going to get worse, not better, unless government... And, you've run businesses, I've run businesses. Your major aim is to make sure... How do you make the people who work in those businesses feel that they are valued?
Yeah.
And at the moment, our doctors don't feel valued. So I wouldn't worry about the money. I think it's about making them feel valued, and it's about saying if we're going to do the weekends, we've got to find proper money to do it. And if that means increasing tax, so be it.
I know that, but I think their job is different. I mean, I love our firemen, our police and everything else, but, if they're looking after a patient, they're saving lives. They can't exactly say, oh, I'm off now, the next shift is in. And I think that their job, they've got such a huge responsibility. And I just feel that we should be appreciating them more.
Do you know how much it costs to train a doctor? Do you have any idea?
£500,000.
Well, I got 600, so let's say it's 550.
A consultant, 750.
But we should be trying to keep them in the UK then instead of them going abroad.
No. I'll tell you how we keep them in the UK.
We should be making them. We should be manacling them. Yeah, I agree.
They're shackled to stay in the UK. Once we've paid 550 grand, right, you give us 10 years, I don't know how many years, before you can ever think of going to Hong Kong or Australia or whatever. Greg's point is right. The government have brilliantly alienated a massive core vote. Yeah. If you had to think of a bigger group of people that would probably vote Conservative outside of majors in Tunbridge Wells, it's probably junior doctors. They may as well have taken out a pistol and shot themselves in the head. And I have sympathy for them. But I don't have sympathy with this idea, let's give them their birthdays off, let's give them special tax. We've invested £500,000 in these people. Let's get something back.
You've got to make them feel valued.
That's what it's all about, and I am sticking up for them. And I know that there's not pots of cash everywhere, because everyone needs pots of cash, but it comes down to we need to appreciate them. They're doing a really serious job.
I'm not disputing that.
We should
OK, how do you make them feel valued? Great.
You make them feel valued.
What do you do?
Well, you said they're not motivated
first of all, you
by
can't
money.
do what this government has done. You can't do what this government has done. You can't say we're going to expand to the weekends and we're going to change all your contracts and we're going to do it whether you like it or not, because we don't live in that world anymore. People will just say, off you go. I think probably Jeremy Hunt can't survive. If you want, you've got to put a different person in. But the problem, I wandered around the health service once doing a report for a Labour government, and what you discover is no one's quite sure who runs it.
Right.
No one is quite sure what this enormous organisation that is the sort of second biggest employer
$2
in
billion
Europe.
a week.
Yeah. No one is
$2 billion
quite sure who runs it. This level, that level, that level. And actually, in some ways, you do far better to break it into smaller bits and run it regionally and all sorts of other things, which is what actually is going to happen in the next couple of years, surreptitiously, but it's happening. I mean, if you look at what's, the NHS has been handed over to the new Mayor of Manchester to run.
That's exciting.
Which is an interesting way of going. Good. But somehow you've got to make... But what you can't do is put in an election promise, we're going to have a wonderful National Health Service at the weekend, but by the way, we're not going to make any money available to do it. You can't do it.
And what you can't do is force contracts on them. I think what Jeremy Hunt, how he's handled it, has been horrific, and he cannot stay. And also, they won't negotiate with him now. So we need to put somebody else in place to resolve this issue.
What's horrific about asking people to work on the weekends?
Well, you cannot force them. You can't say, OK, you have to work on the weekends, here are new contracts, like it or not,
do you not agree?
Take it or leave it.
At the heart of what they were trying to do, the government, there was merit. The way they handled it was appallingly clumsy. But the heart of what they're trying to do makes sense.
But do you think also it's a terrible indication on our democracy when the British government has to force contracts on our healthcare professionals? That, to me, makes no sense whatsoever.
No, I agree. But the heart of what they were trying to get to... I hear what Michelle says, and I appreciate it. We don't want all our great doctors going off to Hong Kong or wherever else they go in New Zealand. I get all of that. But it's not such a bad idea to have a 24-hour national health... People get sick on a Sunday. This might surprise you, but people get sick on a Sunday.
It was exactly the right aspiration, but you've then got to work out how do you do it. I mean, it's easy. Politics is easy. You sit there, you make up a policy, and you think it's done, almost. And actually, the hard bit, as anyone who runs a business knows, is doing it. How do you get people to do it?
But would you study for 8-9 years and then get into massive debt, and then they don't get well paid, I believe. I don't think they're massively paid.
The starting salary is $21,000.
For 8-9 years. And then you get huge debt. So what do you do? I mean, I just think we should appreciate them more. And they're saving lives, and they've been so good with my dad's in a wheelchair. And my son almost died with a nosebleed and everything else, and I love them, and I'm sticking up for them.
I think we should all show the doctors some love. Please don't leave.
Don't leave.
Just stay
in the UK.
We love you.
Maybe we shouldn't get ill.
Exactly.
Never get
try that too.
Never get ill on a weekend
Anyway,
either.
it is my turn next, but before I talk about anything, Michelle, I want to hear more about you picking up men all over the gas. Do you want to explain to us what happened this week?
It was a total innocent error.
They all
honestly.
say that.
No, it really, really was.
It
was just this guy came up to me on stage and said, "There's this young boy, and he wants to give you some flowers." And he came on the stage, and he was tiny, and he was so cute. And I kneeled down to him, and I thought maybe I should just pick him up. As I went to pick him up, he felt about 10 stone. I almost broke my back, but the crowds were cheering. I picked him up.
To the picture.
Oh my goodness, I think he's 22 or 23 years old.
Maybe I should rephrase that, but according to the picture, you're there, you are holding him.
What I can't work out, Michelle...
Sure, you just say, with what you have said, Michelle, isn't it? This was a terrible mistake. It won't happen again.
Why did you have to carry him back to your hotel suite? That's the bit I can't work out.
I know, do you know, I was in Euston Station yesterday, and all these men were running up to me saying, "Pick me up."
I know, if you think you're in trouble with the Tory whips for the health service, you wait till they see that.
Exactly. And it's made global news, hasn't it? The pickup baroness. I love it. Anyway, it will be next. It will be me next, and I am talking about the trouble with Eve.
Provocative. Straight talking. Fairness. Provocative. Provocative.
Ever since Eve in the Garden of Eden, women have been viewed as either a man's inspiration or his downfall. In Eve's case, poor thing, it was both. History, myth and religion have taught us that an ambitious woman will usually create havoc. Just ask Samson, who, as we all knew, had a few issues with Delilah. Hercules, whose own stepmother sent serpents to kill him, or Mark Antony, who died for the love of his Cleopatra. And America is no exception to the rule. Hillary Clinton knows exactly how the US likes its powerful women, behind a man and not in front. And I don't think the US is ready for a female commander-in-chief, if I'm honest, but it desperately needs one. However, as a nation, when pushed, America always has been able to take the necessary progressive step. Think racial integration, or more recently, gay marriage. So maybe America has to be dragged, kicking and screaming, into electing Hillary Rodham Clinton because of the prospect of a President Trump. And actually, Nick, can I say the scary prospect of a President Trump?
I want to play some of your words back to you now. You said you don't think America is ready for a female commander-in-chief, but it needs one. So you know better than the entire country.
I wouldn't go that far, but thank you. What a nice thing to say.
Why on earth would you say that it needs something for which it's not ready, quoting your own words?
Well, there are a lot of things that it's needed that it hasn't been ready for. And I gave two examples. Perfect example would be racial integration.
Right.
So, particularly in schools. So with Brown versus Board of Education, I think it was 1954, whatever that was, the overwhelming majority of people in America were dead against it. Dead against it. But it had to be forced through because it was the right thing to do. And as we've seen, it's been fantastic for the country. And so I think...
Not the whole country. I mean, they've still got massive race issues
but
in some part. Those race riots of last summer,
where they would be if the schools were still segregated. So,
but what I still don't see is what are the
benefits,
and I must yield in a moment, what is the benefit of forcing a nation to do something that it's not ready for?
Well, you're not forcing a nation.
You just did. You said that. You don't think it's ready, but it needs it.
They're going to elect her, so they're not being forced. But the point is, it needs a female president.
So just because she's a woman?
We've had 46 presidents.
Just because she's a woman?
No, because she's
because she needs one. Of course
she
it
is the right person for the job, and she happens to be a woman. And it's time we had a female commander-in-chief. We've had 46 men.
I think the world...
And 50% of the population is female.
The world is changing, and I think we're ready for Hillary. I think she'll do an amazing job. I really do believe that.
But she is the luckiest candidate in the world, isn't she? And if you know, because she's not loved in America, she would struggle, I think, against her. And then you find you've got Donald Trump as the candidate against you.
She isn't necessarily going to win. Don't count your chickens. Well, Hillary has got to get the nomination. Bernie is winning primaries.
Yeah, no, but Hillary
she'll get the nomination.
I know Trump is definitely gunning for Hillary rather than Bernie, but there's still going to be a fight.
No. I think it will be between Trump and Hillary.
I was in the States a couple of weeks ago, and I was reading there that 70% of Republican women
do not like Trump.
Won't vote for Trump.
Exactly.
I'm amazed it's that little.
And that's what's going to kill him.
Yes.
But actually, because more women vote in America than men.
Yeah.
And disproportionately, the women aren't going to vote for Trump because he's so deeply offensive.
And in fact, we've got a great clip. We've got a great clip of Hillary actually talking about Trump and women. Should we have a look?
Now, the other day, Mr. Trump accused me of playing the, quote, woman card. Well, if fighting for women's health care and paid family leave and equal pay is playing the woman card, then deal me in.
Deal me in. You can't force people. You can push desegregation through schools, but you can't push people to vote who they do not want to.
But this is a general election, so they're not being forced.
It's a presidential election,
But that's why it's interesting that so many Republican women won't vote for Trump. And that's why she'll win.
Yeah.
I do hope you're right, Greg. I really hope you're right, because America is way down the league when it comes to gender equality. And if this makes any difference on that, they don't even have paid maternity leave, for Pete's sake.
And you may shake your head, Mr. Ferrari, but all the data shows that equality is better for business.
Not one of you bleeding heart liberals has said that
She's not a bleeding heart liberal.
Listen, if there's another candidate, these are the two candidates.
not one of you has been able to point to her fantastic policy on health, her fantastic policy on whatever it might be, world peace, all of you just say, oh, it's because America needs it, oh, it's because it
Nick,
feels
come
right,
on,
oh, it's because it's a bit like sorting out the race issues.
Senator,
well, that's why she shouldn't do it, actually, in all honesty.
And a
That's why she
Secretary
shouldn't
of
do it.
State. I think she is
If a population of 275
qualified.
million people can only come up with Clintons or Bushes most of the time.
But you're coming down to two. You're coming down to two candidates right now.
Yeah.
So if you were an American, who would you vote for Trump?
Yeah, dead right. In a heartbeat.
Would you?
Absolutely. Particularly as a journalist.
If all you're about is getting a copy.
He's playing the Trump card.
I want her brother as Prime Minister. Yeah. I want President Trump and Putin in Russia. We'd never be able to work.
Don't you all think
is that job as
basically...
an electorate just to support you as a journalist, then?
Well, I've got a few more years to make some money. If you could, I'd be very grateful.
I'd rather make a contribution.
Great story.
Right, listen, don't you think... I really fear for his safety.
Whose?
For Trump.
I don't know.
He's just, he's not part of...
I feel for our
He's not part of that whole... a politician and everything else. I really fear for his safety. I hope he's... I'm wrong.
I feel for his sanity.
Do you know?
I feel for Nick's sanity and our safety.
I think the worrying thing, I agree with you, Nicky, the worrying thing is here we do see him as a bit of a joke, don't we?
Yeah.
Actually, he's not seen as a joke in America. He's more serious than that.
Well, amongst a certain part of the Republican Party.
Amongst a great
He
chunk in the
hasn't
middle.
been sent
Isn't
out
there
to
a
the
joke that
whole
goes, tell me a
nation
joke,
yet.
and the punchline is Donald Trump.
It's interesting, if we go back to what you said from one of our earlier conversations, you were talking about, in a way, you felt a little empowered by what Margaret Thatcher achieved, which I think
for sure, yeah.
How come there's never been someone like a Thatcher, in as much as she achieved, we don't have a joke, but like that again? What happened in that Britain hit this marvellous highland, and then...
Well, Britain got there by chance.
We've had Margaret Beckett as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, and I think that's about it, isn't it?
Well, I think there's still time. I think, there are some really exciting young female politicians, who we've just been talking about. Theresa May could easily be a leader. So I think we do have a chance for that again in this country. I think in America what's interesting is the reason it's taken so long for them is that a lot of their Ivy League universities didn't allow female students until like the late 60s. So it's really only the baby boomers who've been able to create and actually produce somebody who would be presidential.
You would have been a child. Sorry, you would have been a child when Thatcher. What was it you saw? As a child, you would literally have been a schoolgirl.
Well, how old do you think I am?
29. 29. But what was it you suddenly went,
I saw Margaret Thatcher right through, from being a child right through to a teenager, more or less. So those were my formative years. It was so powerful and so important.
Don't you think that the Trump fever gets back to your point?
Which is?
Which is because, Trump, he's not a politician. He's different. People relate to him. He's saying things that,
the authenticity of him,
don't
supposedly.
say. Yeah, and I think that's why he's doing so well.
But that is also why Hillary Clinton will beat him. And I think, to Greg's point, that's why
the women will vote against. But if you look at... I think Trump is like the big-mouthed bloke you meet up the pub who's got an opinion on everything. Or the ones you talk to every morning on the show.
I knew that was coming. Yes, thank you very much indeed.
America may not get what it wants, but it will get what it needs.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen in the United States come November, but what we do know was what happened at the weekend in London with the BAFTA Awards and another procession of dreary actors and lovies telling us that the days were nearly over for the BBC. Let's take a look at some of their dreary words.
No. Woe to any government or any corporation tries to get between that.
Let's face it, everyone in this hall is able to do what they do as well as they do because of the BBC.
Very happy to manage the night at any time, particularly on the BBC. So thank you.
Greg Dyke, I understand that you were in the audience at the BAFTAs. Did you rise to your feet and cheer?
I didn't raise to my feet and cheer, but I did applaud. I did applaud.
How much threat is the BBC under, Greg?
A lot.
I've never believed the threat is as great as being made out, if you want my honest opinion. I think a deal was done between Osborne and the BBC months ago on how much the licence fee would go up, and I think the rest of it, what we've seen, a lot of it is posturing, I think, by certain politicians. And I look forward to seeing what they're actually proposing, because I don't think it's a great threat to the BBC. Clearly the government's going to change. Everybody knew that was going to happen, and everybody wanted it to happen. The present governance system was set up 10 years ago by a Labour government, and they were told, don't do it this way.
You were, and it's worth reminding the viewers, you were an incredibly popular leader of the BBC. Yeah. When you left your job, they actually had protests saying they wanted you to say, everywhere I've ever worked, when the boss goes, we have parties. They actually tried to keep you. How difficult is it running an organisation like that and interacting with the government when you know these...
What I'm interested in is all the discussion about government. In the end, the BBC is run by the Director General. Why? Because they got the money. And actually, organisations work on where you spend the money. Particularly when you don't have to... It's not like a business. You don't have to bring it in. It comes in automatically. And some would argue that's not fair, but it does. And what you decide is where to spend it on. And therefore, the people who have kept the BBC pure, actually, I would say pure, they've kept arguing about impartiality and all that, are not the governance. It's the staff. It's the people who work there.
Can we just say, what is the common noun for actors and directors who are paid by the BBC, who make programmes for the BBC and are praising the BBC on a BBC programme?
I know. When I worked for ITV, I used to moan about... When I worked for ITV, I used to moan about that all the time. Oh, God. But I think what they were saying at the weekend, from the heart, was, look, we've got a very good television system in this country that makes some brilliant television. Yeah. And it's because of the BBC.
Oh, no. Not wholly.
Not wholly. Oh, no. Other people make some brilliant television. I'm not saying only the BBC, but that's the competition. That's why it works. That's why it works.
It's not that hard, Greg. You just have to shake the money tree.
No.
It's a bit more than that.
If that was easy,
not
Nick...
like Sky, not like all the others, where they actually have to go out and damn well earn the cash.
Nick, if it was that easy to make good programmes, everybody would do it. And actually, we've all made programmes that are terrible. Well, I certainly have.
What do you think's going to happen? What do you think they're going to do?
I think there'll be a few changes to governance, and I don't think there'll be that much more different.
The key thing is they've got the licence fee for another 12 years.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard today that
the hardest bit is going to be that they're now saying that catch-up television, which you can get on
they want to charge a licence fee.
They're now going to charge a licence fee, which is what they do in Germany. I don't understand how you do that.
Yeah.
I don't know how you understand.
Really
does that mean you're going to charge everybody who's got a laptop is now going to have to pay a licence fee?
How do you think John Whitting acquitted himself in a sentence through all of this?
Well, he believed certain things that he couldn't get through, is my guess. Anyway, I'm glad that's out of the way. Because it's me next, and I'm taking on Enoch Powell once and for all.
Provocative, straight talking, fearless, provocative, straight talking. Provocative, straight talking.
50 years ago, Enoch Powell warned that if we didn't end all immigration from Commonwealth countries, Britain's streets would eventually be flowing with blood. The people of London have proved that he was simply wrong and laid to rest that infamous prediction once and for all. The democratic election of Sadiq Khan, the son of a Pakistani-born Muslim bus driver, to be Mayor of London, has demonstrated that Britain is fundamentally a tolerant, liberal society. Integration can and does happen, despite predictions of despair, and despite the modern-day Powellite warnings from the Conservatives that electing the Muslim Khan would put public safety in danger. Well done, London.
Greg, yes, I mean, there's a lot to self-congratulate, but I don't think we should be going overboard. It was wonderful to see Sadiq Khan take the oath of office in Southwark Cathedral, a Christian church, and, as you say, a Muslim, and then spend the day visiting a Holocaust museum. We are living in an ecumenical society, but I think that we haven't gone far enough. We live in a super diverse country, and there is still too much ethnic segregation. There are faith schools that are compounding ethnic segregation. And I think Trevor Phillips, who's just done a big report for Civitas, is absolutely right to say we can't allow integration to take place organically. We've got to force it, which means getting in there and enforcing it, not just, let's say, in a completely ethnic school, but let's say in the Isle of Wight, which is the worst performing borough in the country because it's completely white, it's completely British, and it's coastal, 3 of the worst signifiers for attainment. So we need to mix it up everywhere, and it hasn't gone far enough.
I'm not arguing against that. I'm not saying that we've got that. All I'm saying is if you go back 50 years and you go back and look at the predictions that were made at that time, actually we've done OK. We have done better than many people would have predicted then. If you went to a football match 30 years ago, you still had people throwing bananas at black players. That's all gone.
And if a woman stands up in the Commons, men still do this. So, you know, we've got so far, but we've still got to go further.
I agree. But we've made some
why do you think, Greg, UKIP have done so well?
Well, I think UKIP has done so well. Oh, that's about immigration. That's about a group of people, you know, as we see, 15% of the nation who still fear more immigration.
That's what Enoch Powell was talking about.
Yeah. No, but Enoch Powell said is if you don't do something, we're going to have rivers of blood. Well, actually, immigration did continue, and we didn't have rivers of blood. What happened is we elected a London mayor who comes from a Pakistani background.
You're a bright
man. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say you're a bright man, Greg. I'm absolutely staggered that you think the election of a Muslim fella to be Mayor of London is a balm for all the problems. And when Trevor Phillips, who you probably know better than I do, and he's very close to this, and he talks about muttering at school gates and grumbling in the pubs, he's absolutely right. When is the last time that you had to go to the NHS to maybe get A&E care and you saw people who'd arrived from other countries way, way ahead of you? When was the last time one of your children went on a housing association list to try and get council housing? When was the last time perhaps one of your kids tried to get a job and you saw there were no jobs there? That is the reality that is not being addressed.
I don't think that's true. If you want my honest opinion, I don't think that's... I think there are certain parts where you go into the NHS, which I do use quite a lot, and you go into the NHS and you find there's queues of all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds. They're not recent migrants, most of them. They're people who live here.
Well, there's no way of telling.
But they're part of our society, part of our culture. And what I think this demonstrated last week is, you know, as long as this is done slowly, we can accommodate people from other faiths, other backgrounds, and in the end, that's one of the great things about Britain.
Nick, can I just make a point? My parents were immigrants. They were from a Commonwealth country, and we are very pro-British. And when they came here, there were signs that said, no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. Yep. And in one generation, 2 generations, so much has changed. And I think, you know, we talk about Sadiq's election, but let's not also forget about Marvin Rees's election in Bristol. And I went to Sadiq's ceremony at Southwark Cathedral, and it was so wonderful to be in the room, to see people from all different backgrounds who understood the importance...
This is because you're part of this liberal smug elite. You all live in fantastic addresses in posh parts of London. If you were watching this in Manchester, in Leicester, in Sunderland, you might have different views.
Nick, but they all...
God almighty, is it like some West London dinner party?
I don't
it is a West London. Well, it is a West London.
We are in West London.
But it is. No, that's not the point.
Honestly,
it's not the point. The point is, this is the largest single electorate in Britain.
Biggest mandate
ever to vote for one person.
Wonderful.
And they turned out en masse and voted for somebody who was supposed to... All I'm saying is, in the London I was brought up in and grew up in, that was impossible.
Yes.
And Nick, you are, in a sense, part of the reason why Zach Goldsmith lost.
Which is that you have...
You're putting out a dog whistle sound, which I know that only dogs can hear dog whistles.
No. I'm saying, don't... look, it's great that Sadiq, he clearly was the better candidate, and my goodness, London has showed that on the night.
But
that does not solve all the... OK, let me just read from Trevor Phillips. Do we all accept Trevor Phillips is in a good place to talk about this, former chairman of the... Right. It is the appearance of non-English names above shopfronts in the high street, the odd decision to provide only halal meat in some schools, evidence of corruption in municipal politics dominated by one ethnic group or another. Such headlines become gathering straws in a stiffening breeze of nativist, anti-immigrant sentiment. That's not me, that's Trevor Phillips, and he's put on earth to work on that.
I gave Trevor Phillips... I was on the board that appointed him to his first job in television long before he did that. We're big mates, Trevor and I, have been for years.
And he's a force for good.
Have been for years. And he's a force for good because he's black and says, look, actually, I'm not sure about this, I'm not sure about that, I think there's too much of this. But let's every so often just say, actually, the world changed. And let's celebrate the things we succeeded at, as opposed to just saying everything is a problem.
And I think what it shows that in the 21st century, that anyone can do anything regardless of the colour of your skin and respect one another's religions and respect one another. That's it.
It's the only city in Western Europe outside of Rotterdam to have a Muslim mayor. That is fantastic. Well done, London. But it doesn't solve... And I hear what you say, and I remember, I mean, West Ham, apparently, was just hideous for black players there. There was just endless abuse, apparently, in some other London teams as well. Absolutely. And they were in the vanguard, weren't they, along with West Brom, I think, were two teams that really brought black lads along. But it's not all solved, Greg. It's not all solved.
That's not what I'm arguing. What I'm arguing is, where we are, you couldn't have imagined 20, 30, 40 years ago. And that's what I'm saying is, what happens is that this is basically a liberal, tolerant society, despite people like you.
Well, I do my best.
Oh, you do?
People who ran Zach's campaign.
Well, I mean, Zach Goldsmith somehow ran the Conservatives ran that campaign. I suspect they did what happens. They panicked. They saw they were losing, and then the rather sort of Australian bunch of people who were running the campaign
I know what they
forced him
thought,
into doing
because
something.
they told me, they said, we're going to have to go on the dog whistle race card because the only thing we can guarantee is that black people won't vote for Sadiq, white people won't vote for Sadiq, Caribbean people won't vote for Sadiq, etc. And they were wrong. And you're right.
Yeah.
I'm so glad they were wrong, and that London proved them wrong.
And the thing I'd just like to add to that is I feel so sorry for Zach because he's the one person who actually doesn't believe any of that stuff.
Why didn't he say something?
He should have stood up and actually been himself. No, after
because the system, that whole machine takes over elections, doesn't it? And you're right. He should have just said, "You're not doing this."
Yeah.
I mean, Trump.
Not in my name.
Trump wouldn't have done it, would he?
That's why Trump's doing so well.
Wait a minute.
He would have come up with all the reasons, but he wouldn't have let them say things out that he didn't believe.
Zach is listening to all the people around him, where Trump doesn't listen to any of them, and that's why he's doing well.
Zach should listen to himself, and it sends a clear message to the Conservative Party that those sorts of politics no longer apply in this country. So for me, I'm very happy.
Well, history was made without doubt.
Indeed.
Undoubtedly, London.
It was an exciting day.
Yeah.
It was.
And well done.
It was a long day.
And well done to OK, well, that's it from us this week. Send us a tweet if you've got any subjects you want us to debate. More argument and straight talking next week. Thanks.
Provocative. Straight talking. Fearless. Provocative. Straight talking.
Hi, I'm Emma Barnett and I've missed you this week. I hope you've missed me. I'll be back next week, though, to fight with anyone who disagrees with me.
I was on the first 2 weeks of the pledge. Now I've been dropped for 2 weeks and look what it's done to me. I'm so depressed. I can't wait to get back on the show. I just hope they'll have me back. I promise I'll even have a shave.